So for grade 3 standard, we have represent and solve problems involving multiplication and division. The first part is to determine the total number of objects when there is a specific number of groups. So if you had 5 groups of 7, 7 groups of 5, that type of thing. Then to interpret whole number quotients, if you had 35 objects, those would be partitioned equally into 5 shares. Determining how many groups are sharing. Represent problems and solve problems using multiplication and division. And for us, we have the Table 2 glossary, where they have to solve problems with equal groups for unknown products, equal groups when the group size is unknown, equal groups when the number of groups unknown. And then same thing for arrays with unknown product, arrays, group size unknown, arrays, number of groups unknown. And then lastly, compare problems, unknown product, compare group size unknown, compare number of groups. So that really uses the table that's in the glossary, where we're going to be using a majority of our story problems. Next, we have determining the unknown whole number in multiplication and seeing that inverse relationship of multiplication and division, meaning 5 times the unknown equals 35, 5 equals unknown divided by 7, and 5 times 7 equals the unknown. The next section has to do with understanding properties of multiplication and the relationship between multiplication and division, understanding the part-whole relationship. If you have 5, so applying properties of operations as strategies for multiplication and division. So the commutative property, the 5 times 7 equals 35, then you know 7 times 5 equals 35. The associative property, 3 times 5 times 2 equals 30, is the same as 3 times 5 equals 15, then 15 times 2 equals 30. Lastly, the distributive property, another way to solve that same problem, 5 times 7, you could do an array and break it up into 2 smaller arrays. So the first array might be a 5 by 2. So you have 5 rows of 7. So the first part, 5 times 2 equals 10. The second one is a 5 by 5 array, which would give you 25. So you can solve 5 times 7 by adding 10 plus 25 equals 35, which also equals 5 times 2 plus 5 times 5 equals the 5 times 7. And this is one area where we decided we really need a lot more work. We do not focus enough on that. Next, we have multiplying and dividing within 100. And this is pretty similar to the other grades. Oh, I forgot 6, sorry. 6 was understand division as an unknown factor problem. So 35 divided by 5 equals the unknown, by finding the number that makes 35 when multiplied by 5. And here's where you could use the fact triangle. 35 divided by 5, or 35 divided by 7, or you could multiply. So the next section is multiplying and dividing within 100. They sort of stress not using just the time test. Again, the same things that were in the other standards, the accuracy, efficiency, and flexibility, so that they're recognizing the relationship between multiplication and division, expose them to vertical and horizontal problems. This also includes all the experiences working with manipulatives, pictures, arrays, word problems, and numbers. So not just facts, but really becoming fluent in all those different ways. The next section had to do with solving problems involving the 4 operations, identifying and explaining patterns in arithmetic. So the 2-step word problems would use all 4 operations, and it might give you a story problem, and then the math part that you might have to do would be something like 2 times 5 plus m equals 25, where m is the unknown. They have to use mental math and estimation strategies, which could include rounding. one of the things it said in the papers that we read was to think through the problem and the meaning and not always focusing on those key words, and using benchmark numbers for your estimation strategies. And then the last thing for identifying patterns was using tables, explaining them, using properties and observations. For example, the sum of two even numbers is even, the sum of two odd numbers is even, sum of an even and odd is odd. And you could also, for multiplication, and they gave lots of different examples for identifying patterns.